I can't see you, but hello.
They're there.
It's too
They're
dark,
there.
but I
It
hear
is
that
really
you're there.
dark. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. These are pretty cozy. So, Geena, so nice to have you. I have to tell everyone before we get started and dive into this book, I ran into Geena yesterday at the Good Morning America studios in Times Square. I was rushing in, had to iron a shirt, had to be on air in 10 minutes, and I was starstruck. I was like, oh my goodness. And I was gonna go right past her, but I said, I have to say hi because then you're gonna see me tomorrow, today, and say, oh, that's the weirdo girl that just ran past me. You know, she's talking to me for an hour. So glad that I did. You are stunning in person. You're such a beautiful person inside and out, and it's so wonderful to meet you.
Thank you.
You are also an Oscar winner. You've played so many different characters, from a baseball player, commander-in-chief, but you're also a major advocate for women and gender equality in media. So thank you for that.
Okay.
We appreciate you. Yes. And now you are an author.
Yes.
Fantastic.
I can't believe I could say that. Yeah.
And I am here for all of it. So, you know, over the years, I've seen you in films, and I've always thought, wow, she's so confident, self-assured, go-getter.
Exactly.
And, but it's been a journey to get to where you are.
Sort of.
Yes. A complicated journey, and you dive into that in the book.
Yeah.
You stress in the book that your parents, they put a very strong emphasis on politeness.
Yes.
And that led you to the title of the book, right? Dying of Politeness. You know, I want to highlight a story that is early on in the book. You talk about being in a car with your parents and a couple of other family members, and it's not a safe drive. They move you to an area of the car which isn't any safer, but they were so polite that they didn't tell the driver anything. Can you share that story?
Yes. So I was 8 years old, and my great Uncle Jack and great Aunt Marion had taken us out to dinner, my parents and I, and he was driving us back to his house after the meal, and he was 99 and years old, and so we're driving along, and he, every once in a while veered into the oncoming lane and then veered back, and it just kept happening over and over. And my mother, I was sitting right behind him, and my mother at one point picked me up and put me in the middle between them, thinking I would die a little bit less when we had the head-on collision. So he's doing it and nobody's saying anything, and then finally another car does come from the other direction, and this was there was nowhere to pull away for them, you know, and he veered into that lane and he straddled the yellow line, heading straight toward our death. And still, my parents, nobody said anything, and we were, you know, a fraction away from actually having a head-on collision with everybody sitting there. And so, at the last instant, Great Aunt Marion said, "A little to the right, Jack." And the other car went by us like so close. You know, you could see their horrified faces as they streamed by. So I almost literally died of politeness.
So glad that you're here and that you didn't. That's frightening. But it's kind of a theme in the area where you grew up as a New Englander. That was common to be that polite. I mean, a little more excessive within your family, right? But you write in the book, we were a family mute in cars that were about to crash. We stayed mum to prevent unwelcome motions. We kept our peace. Knowing that about your family, how did that affect you growing up?
Well, I mean, it colored every moment of my life. I don't know that I fully realized what was going on, or maybe I didn't even think other people were different than my parents. Other parents were different, but it was very clear, and I just went with it. You know, when you're a kid, you just think this is how you live. I just went with it, where it wasn't just being polite. It was the polite thing to do is to never ask anything of anyone else. You should only give, but not take. And so if I say in the book, if someone was handing me an already poured glass of water, I had to say, oh no, thank you, I'm not thirsty. Like, well, how does that save? We already poured it. Might as well take it. But it was so ingrained in me that you must have no needs, you know.
Also in the book, you talk about how young you were when you started to think about becoming an actor and going into this industry. You asked Santa for sunglasses. Tell us about that story. Somebody else got to the sunglasses, obviously.
Yeah, well,
tell us about
right.
that.
When I was 3 years old, I asked Santa for sunglasses, and my mom, we lived in Massachusetts, and she was like, getting child sunglasses in Massachusetts at Christmas was very hard. But I don't know. See, they told me that I announced when I was 3 that I wanted to be in movies, but how did I even know that that was a job, you know? It's a mystery. It wasn't like I saw it and remember seeing something and oh yeah, but somehow I seemed like I knew that movie stars wear sunglasses, so because I wanted them.
Yeah, so you'd watch TV with sunglasses on. And
I watched TV with sunglasses.
That was your inspiration. Talk a little bit about your path from that young age to high school, and then after high school, right before you got your role in Tootsie. Walk us through that journey.
I was a little odd. I think kids liked me. I was very much. I could tell that kids liked me, but they never liked me in the after-school way. I didn't get invited to their houses or to gatherings and stuff. I would have sleepovers at my house, but yeah, so I always felt like what is it about me? And I made all my clothes, and I made very unusual clothes, and. A boy once said,
we see a photo here too. Was that something that you made?
No. My mom actually
it's
bought
lovely.
me.
It is lovely.
I was very young, but I somehow got crowned. Look at the banana curls. Somehow I got crowned Queen of the Ball. But my church had a fellowship group of teens that family went to the church that I belonged to, and one day the pastor asked us, what would you look for in someone that you might want to date? And the most handsome, popular kid said, I'm not sure, but I know she wouldn't be wearing those. And pointed at my feet.
Oh no.
And I was like, I'm the thing that is the most banned
Where
thing.
is he now?
Yeah, very singled out. Anyway, when I was a junior, my school started a foreign exchange program. They signed up for a foreign exchange student, and would anybody like to go? And I immediately knew that I had to go. Because I just felt like I didn't fit in. We didn't even have a radio. I didn't know what kids were listening to, So I said, I want to apply. They said, you can. And I'm waiting to them to show me the brochures of all the countries I could choose from. And they said, there's one spot in Sweden, and you can have that spot. And I said, absolutely. Where is Sweden? I knew nothing. It had never entered my consciousness before. But I was going to go. And I, in hindsight, I think it was because I wanted a chance to reinvent myself. I wanted to go somewhere that they didn't know that I wore ugly shoes and that I wasn't that tall. Maybe Swedes are taller, which they are.
Kind of a fresh start in another country.
A fresh start without the baggage. So I signed up. I was so eager to go. I couldn't wait. And I'm on the plane. I've never been on a plane. I'm on the plane, and my parents are in the window waving, and I start to wave at them, and I go, wait a second. So in other words, I'm not going to see a single person I know for a year. Oh my God! So I knew before the plane took off that I had made a horrible mistake. And my parents had said, you can call when you get there so we know you got there safe. And I called and said, I have to come home immediately. This is a terrible mistake. And they were like, okay, well, maybe stick it out for like a day. But I did stay the whole year.
You stayed the whole year. How did that impact kind of the rest of your life and journey or whatever came next after that?
It was a real maturing experience because I have to live with other people, I have to get along with other people, I have to learn a language because I didn't also think about that they would be speaking a different language. And so
no one prepped you.
I mean, who thought of this? 2 days after I got there, they dropped me off at high school, Swedish high school. And the first class is in Swedish. And I was like, wait a minute, what's supposed to happen here? How's this gonna work? And I went up to the teacher and said, do you speak English? Yes. What am I supposed to do? She said, I don't know, I've been trying to think what you could possibly do. So I went home and looked up every single word of the homework in the dictionary. And actually did learn it very, very well, eventually.
That's so funny. It took a lot of courage to get there. And you're brave to do that. There is a common theme woven throughout the book, instances where you were often too polite, you say, to use your voice, calling it, quote, don't make trouble Massachusetts self. When did that moment change for you?
Let me think. Well, one incident was when I got a surprise phone call. I had moved out to LA, and I got a surprise phone call from a celebrity who wanted to know if I wanted to go on a date. And I had never been able to say no to anything, so I said yes, but I really didn't want to. And I thought, okay, I'll have some time to think about what the excuse is, but I'll get out of this. And then he called a few days later and said, have you decided when we could get together? And I said, well, it turns out I'm not looking for a relationship right now, so I'm just not dating. And he was like, why didn't you tell me that in the first place? You know, why didn't you just say no? And I'm like, why didn't I just say no? So it was a big wake-up call to how, difficult it can be if you actually can't speak up for yourself.
Definitely. I mean, I have that trouble now at work. It's like, I'm exhausted. I can't do that story. Can you be there? Yeah, I'll be there. Yeah. No problem. It's difficult. But throughout your adult life, have there been any books that have really stood out to you, that have made a tremendous impact, and maybe even inspired you to write your own book?
Right. Oh, well, I don't know about that, but the book that had the most marked impression on me was Backlash by Susan Faludi, which I think came out in '91. It was so shocking. Every chapter, there was one about media, one about whatever, all these different industries and spheres of society, and the level of the backlash against women having this new sort of feminist movement going on at the time was horrifying. And I remember I sent it to everybody I knew, and it had a huge impact on me.
I have to ask, how long were you thinking about writing your own memoir? Was this something that was like maybe hit you last year, maybe during the pandemic, or is this something that you've been thinking about for quite some time?
For quite some time, yeah. I have really wanted to write one, and I had started making notes for it about 10 years ago, I think. But I just kept them and thought, well, I have ADD, I'm never going to be able to finish a book, so who am I kidding? But then COVID came along, and I was like, where's those cards? And let me see. And I started tape recording stories and then having them transcribed, and it kind of made a puzzle out of it. Yeah.
What does your family think about the book?
None of my family's read it yet.
What? Yeah. They waited like everybody else?
The big surprise is I dedicated it to my brother, and he doesn't know yet.
What?
He had said, he's so impressed that I was writing a book, and he says, you gotta decide who you're gonna dedicate it to and all that stuff. And I was like, yeah. Wait a minute, who would it mean the most to? My brother. So, yeah.
That is the sweetest thing. I want to know his reaction.
I autographed a book for him that I sent, and the page says, to Dan, And I wrote, yes, to you, Dan. Love, Geena.
I love that. I love that. Okay, I want to know his reaction when he finally finds out.
Yeah.
It's dedicated to him.
I'll come. We'll have to get here together.
We have to share that with you all somehow. Post it somewhere. I'll post it.
Give me your email addresses. I'll tell them.
Yeah, just a mass email. Hey, by the way, remember I mentioned this? So a few years ago, there was a viral internet video trend called the Mannequin Challenge, where you guys may be familiar with this. You guys remember that? Where folks would...
I didn't hear about that. What?
You didn't hear? Oh, the Mannequin Challenge.
Uh-huh.
So
What was it?
people would have to stay still in action like a mannequin. They'd have to basically look like a mannequin, just kind of stay still in their position while a camera would film them. But when you first moved to New York City in the late 70s, you were kind of doing that already. So I feel like you probably started this viral trend back then when we weren't calling it a viral trend. So tell us that story.
Completely by a fluke. The second day I was in, maybe the first day I was in New York, I got a job at Ann Taylor. It was a very fancy store on 57th and 5th, and as a sales girl. And I thought Ann Taylor was like the height of fashion or something. And so I always was very made up, and I wore Ann Taylor clothes to work. And so one day, the display window, had two mannequins sitting at a little buffet table with with plastic food in front of them. And there was one empty chair in between them. And I was looking and looking, and I said to my friend, dare me to go in the window? And she's like, yeah, go in the window. So I slip in and I sit down. And a couple of people were looking at the window at that time, and they went, what's she gonna do? And I could hear through the window, what's she gonna do? I don't know. Let's see. And so they're waiting and waiting and waiting. And then other people came up, because evidently I actually looked like a mannequin. And I found out that I have an uncanny ability for motionlessness and not blinking. So other people came up and said, what are you looking at? They're like, just wait. And so eventually I had to blink, and they went, oh, and then I froze again.
Performance
in a different
art.
position. And then more people came up and said, what are you guys looking at? Just wait. So it built a huge crowd after a while, and the manager came and saw it. I said, we gotta get out of the window. Oh my God. Actually stay in the window. Because because people couldn't understand why people are standing there looking at nothing, So they started hiring me on Saturdays to do that, and then other stores hired me to do it in the window.
The Mannequin Challenge 1979 edition. I love it.
Yeah.
Was that the start of your modeling career? Did that
it
kind
happened
of
before my modeling career?
Right. So did that give you the idea, like, this is the route that I need to go in order to break into acting?
No, I had that idea before.
Way before that, okay.
So I went to Boston University to study acting, and it was called a theater program. I was a theater major, and all of my classmates wanted to go try to be in theater, Broadway, whatever. And I knew I wanted to be in movies, but nobody ever talked about it, and certainly I never asked anybody, where should I go if I want to be in movies? And so I just went to New York with everybody else. But I had this plan because Christy Brinkley had recently been in a couple of movies, and she was a supermodel, and also Lauren Hutton had been in a movie. And I thought, wait a minute. If I become a supermodel, they will just ask me, just offer me parts in movies. So that became my plan. Well, okay, now I know what I'm going to become a supermodel. Oh, and that was my first modeling photo I ever took. I had something just so I could go to New York with one photo. I had that photo. So, not because clearly I thought that it's much easier to become a supermodel than an
As opposed to an actor.
So, but it turned out to work. But not that I became a supermodel at all. I mean, the only magazine cover I ever got was New Jersey Monthly. And my face didn't show. It was like a yay summer bathing suit shot, and I had a hat that covered my head.
But the modeling experience did help you land the role on Tootsie, is that right?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, because the character that I played, there was a couple of scenes in her underwear, like when I'm sharing a dressing room with Dustin's character, who's pretending to be a girl, and so it was funny that he had to pretend to not notice that I was in my underwear and all that stuff. Anyway, so the casting people had an idea. Let's see if any model agencies have models that can act, because then we know we're going to get something. So my agents told me, you could go to an audition for this Dustin Hoffman. Oh my God. And they said, wear a bathing suit under your clothes, because if you read well, they're going to want to take a picture of you in a bathing suit, just so they get an idea of what you'd look like in your underwear. So, oh yeah, that's me in the movie.
There it is.
So I go to the audition, and it's just a casting assistant with a video camera, and I do the scene, and she says thank you, and that's it. And so I'm like, well, I mean, they said if you read well, they'd want to see it, and she didn't want to see me in a bathing suit, so I completely put it out of my mind. And so then Sidney Pollack was the director and saw my video and said, hey, wait a minute, I really like her. What, don't we have a bathing suit shot of her? And they said, no, we forgot to get it. We'll get her back. And it turned out that I was in Paris for the first time to do the runway, the runway modeling. I took lessons on how to walk on the runway. And they were saying, she's out of the country. Well, see if her model agency has any photos of her, in a bathing suit or something. And so I had happened to be in a Victoria's Secret catalog, and they were able to send over those pictures. And they were like, then I got the part. I don't know how much the Victoria's Secret catalog had to do with it, but I guess it at least assured them that I might look good in my underwear.
Landed you this role in Tootsie.
Yeah.
With Dustin Hoffman and so many greats. How did you navigate that world? I mean, it was so early on in your career.
Right.
How did you stay calm? How were you not intimidated?
Right.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I was stunned that for my first audition, I would get a part in a major motion picture and with, superstars and, but on the other hand, I was like, yeah, this is exactly what was supposed to happen. So it was this weird mix of like nervous and I got this, and but I was very worried that there was some kind of movie acting that I had never learned, and they would be like, she doesn't know how to movie act. So I was worried about that, but I found it very comfortable to be on the set, and they were so gracious to me and welcoming and treated me like a peer, even though I was in my underwear.
But looking good. Yeah. So out of all of the films that you've been in, and this may be a tough question, but what is your all-time favorite movie to have shot?
So when I read Thelma and Louise, Thank you.
It's a favorite.
That movie too.
It's a favorite.
I was like, I have to be. My life has come to the point where I must be in this movie, and it took me a year to get cast, and then I got to work with Susan Sarandon. The whole thing was incredible. So that was the most significant thing. It was like a life-changing experience, and I couldn't have loved it more. But a very close second is Long Kiss Goodnight, where,
I think that's one of her favorite movies.
I get to be an amnesiac. Action movies. Yeah, I get to be an amnesiac assassin and transform and do all this action stuff. And I loved it. That was so much fun. That was so much fun.
It's going to be so cool to be able to transform into so many different characters, just and become them. But going back to Thelma and Louise, you mentioned that Susan Sarandon gave you a boost to your confidence, and you talk so much about confidence in the book. Talk a little bit about that and how Susan helped you in that way.
Well, so I actually signed a contract that I would play either part, because I had it in my head that I could play Louise. You know, I would very easily play Louise too, or instead. And but then so I actually signed an agreement. I'll play either part. And then they found Susan Sarandon and said she was going to play Louise. I'm like, okay, I'm sure that's fine. And literally, when she walked in the door, I was like, what was I thinking? Of course, I couldn't have been Louise. Of course, I have to be Thelma. Hi, I'm Thelma. And so we sit down. It's just Ridley and Susan and I in a room. And what we're going to do is just go through the script page by page. Anything anybody wants to change or any ideas, thoughts, let's all share them. And we crack open the script. And I'm pretty sure it was page 1 that Susan said, my first line here, I think we should cut it. And I was like, what? I was stunned that a woman would say something without saying, I don't know what you're going to think. And especially the first line in the movie. Because I lived with 7 qualifiers before I would actually get to the point. And she I just was in another world, watching her. And then that's what the movie was like. I mean, we really like our characters where, Thelma really, really looks up to Louise, and Louise kind of takes care of her and stuff. So it was pretty incredible.
Yeah, that was a bold move by Susan. She just went in there. So,
but that's how she lives.
That's how she lives.
And I got to watch 3 months of how she moves through the world. And everybody loved her, and she was perfectly polite, but she'd say, no, I don't want that. I do want that, whatever. Yeah.
Since we're speaking about roles, can you shed some light on some of the quirkier roles that you were drawn to? Like in Beetlejuice, The Fly. I have to say Beetlejuice was my absolute favorite as a child. I watched it every single day for many, many years.
Wow.
And this is very full circle moment for me because I used to dance on this stage as a child at the 92nd Street Y. I grew up coming here. And now to talk to you, anyway, not about me, but some of your quirkier roles made an impact. So talk about what kind of drew you into those characters.
I was always drawn to unusual characters or characters in unusual movies, and I didn't really figure out why that was until later. And I think it was that I wanted to play characters who get to do something, who are not just the girlfriend of the person doing the interesting, but actually do interesting things themselves. And I was fortunate enough to get offered, some of those roles that I played, but I loved that. And I really, by the time I did League of Their Own, I was like, yeah, right, I want to play baseball. I don't want to be the girlfriend of the person playing baseball. But Earth Girls Are Easy was very impactful.
And speaking of A League of Their Own, you've mentioned that it brought out a different side of you. Like you hadn't grown up being very athletic or in sports, but it brought out that side and something that you stuck with after the movie. Talk about that. You're a champion in something. I'm sure this crowd already knows, but
anyway, in high school, I didn't want to try any sport. I didn't, because I was so self-conscious about being so tall anyway, that it was me being sporty. That I was terribly self-conscious, and the idea of playing a sport and inviting people to watch me do something was like, I would never do that. The girls' basketball team was like, just stand there, please, just join the team.
Intimidate them.
Oh, God, yes, and stand around looking intimidating, I guess. But, so then I get cast in a role where I have to come off as the best baseball player anyone has ever seen, and never had played any ball sport. And so of course I trained. They had incredible coaches, and they very soon started saying, you have a lot of untapped athletic ability. I do? That's incredible. It really took me till I was 36 to find this out. And so I learned, pretty really good baseball. And then I had to learn, for Long Kiss Goodnight, I had to learn ice skating and pistol shooting and taekwondo. And for Cutthroat Island, I had to learn horseback riding and sword fighting. And so I hadn't known how to do any of them, but I was kind of good at all of them. And so I thought, wow, I really do think I have a knack for this stuff, but I want to learn a sport in the real way and not the movie version of it, because any home run that my character hit in that movie, and I only hit home runs in that movie. There's a lot of baseball players like that who only hit home runs, but I would do the mighty swing, and because if you're doing a close-up, the camera crew is right there, so we had to hit balls filled with cotton puffs. They put in a big crack afterwards, so I would do the mighty swing and the puff ball goes away. And then the props guys had a giant slingshot, and they would send the balls over the fence for me. Yeah. Anyway, so then I knew I wanted to try something, and I was watching the Atlanta Olympics, and they had a lot of coverage of archery. And I was like, wow, that is beautiful and so very dramatic, and I wonder if randomly I could be good at archery. And I was 41 and started lessons and became utterly obsessed with it. My coach claims that I asked him on the first lesson, how old is too old to go to the Olympics in archery? And this is before I touched a bow.
Those goals.
I have goals. And so anyway, I immersed myself for 2.5 years. And
how did the sport, archery, kind of help you find your inner peace after so many years of navigating the politeness and how you grew up? Did that help at all at that point in your life?
Oh, tremendously, because at one point my coach started, during practice I would shoot an arrow and he'd say, what were you thinking? What were you just thinking? I'd say, oh, I was thinking I suck. And I shoot another arrow, what were you thinking? I was thinking, you think I suck. And I hadn't really ever tuned in to my negative self-talk, but I realized it's everywhere in my life, all day long. I'm saying, you can't do this, oh, you're an embarrassment, people are laughing at you, all that stuff. A lot of people have negative self-talk. And, but having him point it out and saying, it's very important for archery that you don't, anything can ruin your shot. It's such a precise thing. And you have to get rid of the negative talk. So I started saying, I suck. Actually, I'm doing the best I can. I'm doing very well, considering. And, try to do that in my whole life. So it really changed my life a lot.
You quieted that voice.
I really
did. Negative voice.
I did.
That we
I
all
don't
have.
not ever have it, certainly. I've had it a number of times today, but it's much, much different and better.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Now, you've been a pioneer for the quality of roles available to women in Hollywood. Was there a particular moment when you realized you needed to be an advocate for change?
Well, so having done Thelma and Louise, Susan and I were both stunned by the reaction, because we were used to being recognized here and there for whatever, people would say, hey, The Fly or Beetlejuice. This was during my bug phase, but...
I like that phase.
I know, that was a good phase. But as soon as that movie came out, and nobody had any expectation that anybody would care at all about the movie, and as soon as it came out, if somebody recognized me from that, they were like, oh, I have to talk to you. I have to tell you what the movie meant to me, and this is what I thought, and this is what who I saw it with, and this is how many times I saw it, and my friend and I acted out your trip. Really? Which part? And what it made me realize was we give women far too few opportunities to come out of a movie theater feeling inspired and empowered. And so from then on, I really had how women in the audience were going to react to my character in mind. That I wanted to play roles of characters who decided their own fate. In other words, they were in charge of their life, because that's really what we were in that movie, was in charge of our lives. So, so that changed. Anyway, so here I am hyper aware of all this. And when my daughter was a toddler, I thought, hey, we could start watching preschool shows and sit down with her to watch one. And the first one, after about 5 minutes, I'm like, how many female characters are there on this show? And there was one only, and I was stunned. I was, wait a minute, there's gender inequality in kids stuff in the 21st century? We're not showing kids the boys and girls are equal by now? And I didn't intend to make it a life mission or anything like that. I just thought it was remarkable. And whenever I had a meeting with somebody in the industry, I would say, have you ever noticed how few female characters are in movies made for kids? And every person of the dozens of people I talked to said, no, but that's not true anymore. That's been fixed. And sometimes they would name a movie with one female character as proof that gender inequality was over. And so I realized this is utterly unconscious. They absolutely just don't know that they're doing it. And so what if I got the data and I could come and present it to them privately? I don't have to educate the public, because I can go to the people who actually make it. And if I can change them, then it'll change everything. So that's what I did. And people responded.
People are responding, yes.
Yeah.
You end your memoir on a very powerful note about your hope for your future grandchildren. Mm-hmm. And after making such a significant impact with the Geena Davis Institute on Gender and Media, what is your goal for the next generation? You're working on it now and speaking with these people, but what is your goal for the future?
Well, my first thing was I want to change what kids see first. Because if we're teaching kids to have unconscious bias from minute one, we all want to try to get rid of unconscious bias later, but it's almost impossible once you have it. So that was the main goal. And we actually have now achieved parity in the lead characters of both kids' TV and family movies, 50-50 male and female. So that was a big goal of ours.
Incredible.
But there's still so much more to do, and representation across every underrepresented part of the society is glacial progress, and so we have a lot more to do.
A lot more to do. A little bit of progress here and there, but a lot more to do. We have some audience questions here.
Yay!
Yay! This is my favorite part. Okay, so on that same note, this person asks, what are your thoughts on aging and gender equality in Hollywood? I know, before you take that
Too
sip.
bad. I didn't time it right. That would have been funny.
It's okay. You thought the question was longer. No name on this, but thoughts on aging and gender equality in Hollywood right now?
So we want to think when we see things happening that means it actually has changed. And now that I have got all invested in data, I'm like, if you can't measure it, somebody actually said that, if you can't measure it, it didn't happen. And that's true about progress there. In our most recent study of films, we found that we looked at age, and of characters 50 and over, only 20% of the population of films is characters 50 and over. But female characters that are 50 or over are 5% of the population of film. 50 on is a giant segment of the population and virtually invisible. So, I mean, there's some great shows on TV, with women over 50, and there's been some great movies like that, but it's a pretty chronic and unmoving number at this point.
Still an issue. Let's, okay, so this next question, or not a question, but this person wants you to explain the title of your book. This is clearly the cover.
Yeah.
I love the cover.
Well, you understand what's going on here? I'm being polite to this bear who's going to kill me. The back cover was another concept for the cover, where I would be curtsying to the Grim Reaper. He shows up and I'm like, welcome. So, I wanted a funny cover to illustrate, in a funny way, because it's a funny title, the Dying of Politeness. Well, it's because of that car incident, I mean, realizing the way that I had been raised and growing up, and then this, big struggle, meandering struggle to get to where, how I react to something authentically when it happens, because so many times I'm like, how do I react to that? I can't say what I think, and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's what it's about. And now I say things when they happen, more or less.
Yeah. Saying it how it is, kind of. So this next question, it says, this is referring to League of Their Own, when you were making a League of Their Own, did you think it would become so iconic?
No, I didn't think about that. I really didn't. I loved it and hoped people would like it, but it was a huge hit. Actually, it's the most successful baseball movie that exists, in fact. So. And then, because of that, there were so many other female sports movies.
I was waiting. I was like, wait, really?
But it's only
Did I
30
miss that?
years since, so I'm sure that the wave will come.
At some point,
Now I forgot what the question was.
Let's see. Did you think it'd be so iconic? No,
Yeah.
You did it.
Yeah.
Okay, so from a League of Their Own, let's go back to Beetlejuice. Best memory from Beetlejuice.
My favorite thing about, the shoot was so much fun, and they didn't want to use, Tim Burton didn't want to use special effect, added special effects, whatever we could do, practical they call it, when you can do it on camera, we wanted to do. So there's a scene where, near the beginning, we first come back to the house and we don't know yet that we're ghosts, and we're talking about what's going on, and then I look at the mirror and I realize, wait a minute, I can't see us in the mirror. And he said, what? And there's a little wooden horse on the mantle, and so what Tim did was he had a horse and a dowel and then another horse, and so the way he shot it, you couldn't see the dowel, but you just saw both horses moving when I did this with it, and I was like, he's so clever. So it was really fun.
I remember that scene very, very well. So this next person in the audience asks, what did you learn most from the female directors you worked with, specifically Penny Marshall?
Right.
And it's a two-part question. Since A League of Their Own was such a huge undertaking, was the set different than compared to when a man was directing a film? So let's tackle the first one. What did you learn most from the women directors you worked with?
Well, one thing I learned was that it's extraordinarily not that different, to have a female director. Penny obviously did a brilliant job, but it wasn't like, whoa, this is different. It wasn't like doilies on the furniture or anything. It wasn't a lot of knitting.
Getting the job done. That's good. So, all right, let's see. Reaction to the following. Okay, lightning round. This is fun. I wish this had names on them. Lightning round. Reaction. I know. Raise your hand. Reaction to the following names. This one we tackled, right? Susan Sarandon.
My ride or die.
Love that. Madonna.
Surprisingly fabulous and chill, laid back, easygoing. I mean, when she worked on the movie, there was no entourage, nothing yet. She was incredible.
Nice. Dustin Hoffman.
My mentor, who really took me under his wing to my benefit.
Fantastic. Tom Hanks.
The nicest guy in the world. And I was used to always being, the nicest person on my sets. I was used to having
He out-niced you.
You're the nicest person I've ever worked with. And then I see how he is, and I'm like, well, how am I going to be nicer than him? It would be impossible. Yeah, so I was kind of pissed at him.
Mad at the nice guy.
Robbed me.
And lastly, Brad Pitt.
I mean, just charming and incredibly fun and wonderful. But I read with 4 finalists for that role. Ridley and the casting director wanted to see, maybe how we interact with each other. And he was brilliant actor. Besides being,
We know what that means.
besides being Brad Pitt, he was, yeah,
It's great.
It was amazing.
So this next question, let's see. How can people get involved with your institute?
Oh, you mean besides donating? Well, really, no. You go to our website, and all of our researchers there, and all kinds of tips on how to participate with us. Yeah, that would be great.
Fantastic. So visit the website. And here's a friendly reminder that books are available for purchase in the lobby. Do not forget to pick one up. It is a great read. It really, really is. All right, I think that's it for these questions. I do have one last question for you. We've talked a lot about the book, your career, your journey. What is one thing that you want people to walk away with once they read your book?
I hope they relate to it. I mean, I think there's a lot of us, men and women, who feel like or have felt like they're giving away their power sometimes to someone else for whatever reason, to make them like you or to gain something. And a lot of it is instances where you'd rather not do that. You wish you didn't feel like you had to. And so I think people will relate to the struggles that I had with that and still have. I still might die of politeness, I'm not sure.
Well, Geena, this has been a lovely conversation. What a true honor to be here to talk about your memoir. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you for
being a lovely audience.
Thank you.